everyone. Welcome to Inside Winston Cup Racing. We're at the Daytona Motorsports Expo, a promotion that was going on for several days during summer speed weeks here in Daytona Beach, Florida, during the running of the Pepsi 400. Well, the Pepsi 400 belonged to Dale Earnhardt this year. He dominated the race, leading the most laps. It was close at the end, but nevertheless, he had the best when it counted the most. We'll have highlights of the Pepsi 400 and much more in this half hour of Inside Winston Cup Racing.
Dale does it again at Daytona. Earnhardt beats the heat and the fleet field to take the checkered flag, and Pat is leading the race for the Winston Cup Championship. We'll have all the highlights of the Pepsi 400.
Steve Grissom came from a couple of laps down to capture the victory in the Haviland 250 at the Milwaukee Mile. We'll have all the action from the first Busch Grand National race held at that track since 1985.
And we'll take you backstage with Onstage, TNN's postcard from Florida to the country music world. It's just part of the fun during the summer speed weeks in Daytona.
Inside Winston Cup Racing is brought to you by cold-filtered Miller Genuine Draft and Miller Genuine Draft Light, taking the country by storm. And by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car.
Dale Earnhardt has not been able to capture the biggest crown in auto racing, the Daytona 500. He has come awfully close several times, but he has been able to come back in July and win the Pepsi 400 on a couple of occasions, and that included the last running of it last Saturday at the Daytona International Speedway. Now, he took a major step towards trying to win his sixth NASCAR Winston Cup Championship. He extended his point lead to 251 over Dale Jarrett. But before the race, there was some blockbuster news. For more on that and highlights of the race, here's Bill Weber.
Ned, it was a warm and sunny week here in Daytona, especially the morning of the Pepsi 400. Now, Ernie Irvan won the pole for this race, qualifying the Kodak Chevrolet at 190.327 miles per hour. In fact, Ernie and Kyle Petty were the only two drivers in the entire field above the 190 mark. But the big news was not at the front of the pack. Instead, it was here at the back of the pack, and it's centered on Ken Schrader's car. Schrader's Kodiak Chevrolet was disqualified following the first round of qualifying for the Pepsi 400 when it was discovered holes had been drilled in the carburetor in an apparent attempt to bypass the restrictor plate. Originally, Schrader and Joe Hendrick, listed as the car owner, were fined and suspended for 4 races. When Schrader announced his intent to appeal, the suspension was postponed. Then on Tuesday of this past week, an appeals board rescinded the 4-race suspension, but upheld a $5,000 fine for both owner and driver. It was also announced at Daytona that Terry Labonte will join Hendrick Motorsports in 1994, replacing Ricky Rudd, who is leaving to form his own Winston Cup team. Labonte is a former Winston Cup champion. He finished 8th in the points last season, driving for car owner Billy Hagan.
Today's Winston Cup highlights are brought to you by Texaco Haviland Formula 3. Add more life to your car.
Ernie Irvan started on the pole as the defending champion and one of the pre-race favorites, but would only lead 5 laps. The first caution of the day flew on the first lap when Jimmy Hensley crashed. The rest of the field dodged the Ford and returned to green flag racing on lap 5 when Dale Earnhardt passed Irvan and took the lead for 18 of the next 19 laps. On lap 22, Jimmy Spencer and Hut Strickland got together exiting turn 2. Jeff Bodine, Bobby Labonte, Jimmy Horton, and Kyle Petty were all caught up in the crash. Bodine and Petty were the only 2 cars to continue. Derek Cope, Jeff Gordon, Dale Jarrett, Ricky Rudd, and Morgan Shepherd all had a strong run going early in the race, and all were chasing Earnhardt, who led 72 of the first 92 laps. Ken Schrader's run from the rear of the field was rewarded with a lead for lap 64, and the Kodiak car spent the rest of the race battling the black Goodwrench Chevrolet near the front of the field. Problems on pit road plagued several teams. Derek Cope's surprisingly strong run was ruined when he hit a tire coming down pit road on lap 58. During the same sequence of pit stops, Mark Martin left his stall before the right rear tire was secured. But Dale's run was vintage Earnhardt. Strong car, near perfect pit stops, and great driving. As the 400 roared along, Sterling Marlin joined Schrader as Earnhardt's chief challengers. The Ray Festus ride took the lead on lap 113 and led 10 laps before a caution flag for Richie Petty's stalled car brought most of the leaders to pit road. Martin stayed on the track, but under green could not hold the lead. First Urban, then Earnhardt, then Schrader. Then on lap 132, Earnhardt moved to the front for the final time with 29 laps remaining in the race. Marlin and Schrader made their last attempt on the last lap, with Earnhardt battling a car that was getting more loose with every lap. Earnhardt's car drifted high and rubbed with Schrader, then darted down to the inside to block Marlin's move. The race was over. Earnhardt took the checkers by 2 car lengths, while Marlin edged Schrader for second.
Man, old good race car, it just runs real good, and we was fortunate. We got loose, we pushed off the corner, got loose, and got out, and then Schrader bumped me and sort of cut him off, or was sideways wrecking in front of him, really is what it was. And then the 8 car came out from around him, and I went to the bottom and pinched him off a little and kept him behind me. And they got side by side, and then I just ran them to the line.
Now, this Hudson Hornet was a tough race car back in its days. This car was driven by Herb Thomas, prepared by Smokey Unick from here in Daytona Beach, Florida. And I'll tell you, it was the car to beat back then. Doubt if it would have fared too well in the Pepsi 400, but nevertheless, it was strong in its day. We need to take a short break. Still to come on this edition of Inside Winston Cup Racing, we'll have highlights of the Busch Series event from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we'll also take a look at some of the other things going on here in Daytona during summer speed weeks. And as we leave you for this break, here's the balance of the finishing order for the Pepsi 400. This Daytona Motorsports Expo was billed as a deal for the legends in auto racing, and here was former 2-time NASCAR Winston Cup champion and Hall of Fame member Tim Flock had his Charlotte Motor Speedway pace car here as part of the activities. There are always a lot of things going on in Daytona, especially in February when the season is kicked off here, but it doesn't stop. When they come back in July, there are a lot of things that goes on here as well. And TNN has learned that motorsports fans and country music fans are basically one and the same, and they came here to tape part of their own stage series, and we went in to take a look at one of those tapings.
Well, let's go, little baby, big dog in a ring. Just as soon as the moon comes up and the sun goes down.
Oh, we got TNN in Daytona Beach, man. We came down and surveyed a couple of months ago, and I saw this old band shell here, and I said, hey, what a great place to do some shows. And we knew racing was coming in next week, so we thought we'd set it up for you.
So how's the reaction been for you?
The reaction's been real good. We had all the rain that you're not going to get, see? So we've got that done for you. So the first 3 or 4 nights, we had some rain. And everything's been going real good. The shows have been good. The crowds have been great. Charlie Daniels got sick on us, and he flaked out tonight, but we know he wished he could be here.
On stage is a TNN presentation that features country artists performing in concert. Neil McCoy came in to pinch hit when a sore throat prevented Charlie Daniels from making the show. This was the final performance in a series of programs recorded along the beach for air dates later this summer. The setting was a perfect atmosphere to showcase Daytona and country music to the visiting race fans, including Neil.
Neil, you're a racing fan? You down here doing some music? Going to catch any racing action?
Boy, I wish I could. Yes, I am a racing fan, but I'm just down here to do music. We're here today and gone tomorrow. It's one of those things. We're going down to, I don't even know where we're going. But yeah, I'd love to catch a race, but we just don't have time this time.
It's a lot of work for you, though, coming into town. You guys travel more than race crews do.
Yeah, you're telling me. We're on the road about 300 days last year, and I think we'll equal that. So we very seldom get a chance to catch many races, but when we get some off time, we try and sneak one in.
Before the performance began, McCoy spent a few minutes talking about his music. Portions of the interview will be blended into the program. And as the fans warmed up inside, Neil was getting ready to take the green flag for his high horsepower show.
Oh,
You're a NASCAR racing fan.
Yeah, we sang at the Atlanta Motorcraft 500 early last year.
Terrific. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I loved it. There's about, I don't know how many people show up will sing, but 200,000 or 300,000, and it's terrific. They're great fans.
Terrific. Well, enjoy yourself tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Nice meeting you.
All right.
Here you go.
Let's have a big Daytona Beach welcome for Neil McCoy.
Neil's performance was an electric mix of the man and his music, providing an energetic and entertaining evening for music fans and race fans.
Jim, everybody talks about Daytona in February. I don't think a lot of people think about all the excitement that goes on here in July, but it's a big racing town, 4th of July, too, isn't it?
Absolutely. A lot of families are here. They bring their families down to see the beach, go to the race. Race is over, 2 or 3 hours, and it's normally over by about noon. Then you go to the beach in the afternoon, have a big 4th of July celebration.
Well, how about that country music auto racing relationship? That's a pretty strong bond.
I'll tell you what, it's unreal. In fact, last night, let's see who was here last night. Davey Allison was here last night. Michael Waltrip was here last night. And Dale Jarrett was here last night. Had a big time out here. In fact, I believe Michael's been here for a couple of the shows. And they enjoy the country music, and I think most of the fans do, too.
The concert was a perfect warm-up to the race weekend on a Daytona night that blended together sand, surf, and songs.
Yeah, we're just out here enjoying the evening. We came out last night and watched Joe Diffie in Little Texas and Neil McCoy tonight. This has been a lot of fun. In fact, there's a lot more going on down here for the fun things for everybody in July than there is in February. February, I have to work all the time.
Yeah, nice family night for you?
Yeah, we're having a good time. Chris is enjoying this, and Robbie and Liz. We brought a babysitter along from Alabama, Casey Roberts. She's enjoying it too. So we're just having fun.
What we try to do is try to change the image of Daytona Beach a little bit. A lot of it's been a big party town. We're trying to get the families to come back to Daytona Beach.
Big dog in a ring.
Certainly looks like everyone had a great time, and we know someone else who's going to have a great time too. We want to congratulate our winner of the Miller Genuine Draft Grand Marshal Sweepstakes. He is Ken Ledbina from South Amana, Iowa, who will be going to Pocono as the Grand Marshal of the Miller Genuine Draft 500. We know he'll have a great time. From all of us at Inside Winston Cup Racing and Miller Genuine Draft, our congratulations. We need to take a short break. Still to come are highlights of the Haviland 250 from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So you stay with us.
After his victory in the Pepsi 400 at Daytona, Dale Earnhardt leads the Winston Cup point standings by 251 over Dale Jarrett. We'll see if he can extend that lead this week after he runs the $1 million Slick 5300 in New Hampshire. Highlights next week.
As we begin the second half of the 1993 Winston Cup schedule, we'll look back on the first 15 races and talk to some of the top drivers in the sport as they give us their midterm grades. We'll have the report card.
The Sears Point International Raceway was the last track to be added to the Winston Cup schedule back in 1989. Now it's the New Hampshire Speedway becoming the latest to reap the rewards of a Winston Cup stock car race. We'll have the behind-the-scenes story from the first race at New Hampshire.
Do these race cars bring back any memories to any of you folks? They certainly do to me, because this is the type of race cars I started my career in back in the early 50s. This was the cars that made up the Sportsman division, which is now the Busch Series in NASCAR. This coach was driven by Crawfish Kreider. The coupe back there was driven by Ralph Moody. I probably raced against both of these race cars. I certainly raced against the drivers. Now, the Busch Series had not been to the Milwaukee Mile in several years before going there this past weekend for the Haviland 250. They put on a good show on that track, and our Randy Pemberton was there. Here are the highlights.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin celebrated Independence Day as a record crowd of 34,000 fans gathered at the Milwaukee Mile for 250 laps of Busch Grand National competition. Bobby Dotter bagged the pole with a new track record of over 113+ miles per hour and led the 37-car field to the green flag. But it was outside pole sitter Jeff Burton and his Baby Ruth Ford finding his way into the lead, a position he would keep for all but 2 of the first 68 circuits. Larry Pearson and Ward Burton were the first to suffer ill fate on the afternoon when they were black flagged for jumping the green flag. Then it was Steve Grissom going to pit road. Grissom had a tire go down in his Chevy. The pit stop put the Busch Grand National points leader 1 lap down when the caution flag flew while he was on pit road. After the yellow, Burton began to pull away with Todd Bodine running second, followed by Robert Presley, David Green, and Davey Allison, who had his Haviland Ford on a string and into 5th place from his 23rd starting spot by lap 25. By lap 40, it became apparent that tires would become the story of the day. A caution brought out by Jerry Glanville brought everyone to pit road on lap 46. With a 2-tire rule in effect, under caution, most front runners took on right sides. Rusty Wallace, who made the trip from Daytona, was the first of the Winston Cup drivers to fall out. Transmission problems sidelined the Miller machine on lap 53. Shortly after that, contender Ward Burton went a couple of laps down after bringing out a caution with a cut tire. And Robert Presley's power plant lost a cylinder, dropping him from contention. As they hit the halfway mark, it was Todd Bodine out front in the fiddle-faddle Chevy with Davey Allison, Burton, Larry Pearson, and Joe Nemechek now rounding out the top 5. But as the race wore on, teams running on Goodyears began to run out of tires. As cars dropped out, other teams went to their pits to secure their leftover rubber. On lap 153 of the scheduled 250, Larry Pearson pushed his Chevy past then leader Davey Allison and set out after his first Busch Grand National win of the season. Attrition began to thin the field over the final 100 laps. Harry Gant went behind the wall on lap 172. Allison was eliminated 28 laps later. Both were out with engine failure. With 50 laps to go, Rodney Combs got bumped by Tim Fedewa to bring out a yellow, and that brought everyone to pit road. With 13 cars still on the lead lap, at that time it was anybody's race. First, it was Todd Bodine, David Green, and Jeff Burton. After failing to take on rubber under the caution, Bodine was the first of the 3 to fade. One more caution for this crash involving Roy Payne would set up a fantastic finish. With 8 laps to go, David Green was the leader, but then the guys on the move were Pearson and Steve Grissom, who had finally gotten back on the lead lap after a late race caution. Pearson took the lead from Green with 5 to go, but it was Grissom reeling him in and taking the lead with 2 laps remaining. Grissom went on to capture his second victory of the year and $23,000.
Today's mailbox is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft.
Our question this week comes from our voicemail box.
And those tractor trailers that haul the race cars, would you tell us how they get permits in order for them to go into the different states? Who does the work for them?
Most of the teams use a specialty company to obtain the permits because it's gotten so complicated now and so involved that the people within the teams just don't have time to do that. The regulations, the gas permits, all of those permits change fairly constantly, and it's just an impossible situation for the teams to do it. That was an interesting question. Thank you for calling in, Vicki.
If you have any race questions or would like to hear Winston Cup pole qualifying results, race results, or point standings, call us at 1-900-73-RACES. Charge is 95 cents per minute. Average call 2 minutes for mailbox or 3 minutes for results. Fans under 18, get your parents' permission before calling. If we use your question on the air, you'll receive this embroidered Miller Genuine Draft jacket. You'll also receive a copy of NASCAR Video Magazine's Racing's Toughest Tracks and Turns, one of the latest volumes in the exciting home video series, bringing the NASCAR lifestyle roaring into your living room.
As we leave you for this week's program, we're joined by some of the greatest drivers of all time. Wish we had time to talk with each of them, but our time's up. We'll come to you next week from the New Hampshire International Motor Speedway, new ground for the NASCAR Winston Cup Series, and we're certainly looking forward to it. Folks?
Inside Winston Cup Racing has been brought to you by Cold Filtered Miller Genuine Draft and Miller Genuine Draft Light, taking the country by storm. And by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Ground transportation for the Inside Winston Cup Racing crew provided by Mark III Luxury Vans and Trucks, the official vans and trucks of NASCAR. Clothing for the Inside Winston Cup Racing crew provided by Simpson Race Products, where innovation never stops. Promotional consideration and a fee paid for by NASCAR Video Magazine, taking you behind the scenes to tour NASCAR's toughest tracks. Order your first volume of this exciting home video series today.